Hello corporate finance class. This is Diana Block, your online instructor. I promised more videos, so here's the next one to cover module 5. And right now I'm going to go over problem 2, problem 16-2 in your textbook. I've got the textbook open right here. And this problem is going to be very similar to the second problem in your module 5 homework assignment in my finance lab. So I'm going to walk through this one and tell you how I'm going to solve it. So you see you've got some information here. You're going to start a technology firm, and if it's successful, it could make you lots of money. If it isn't successful, it'll be worth nothing. So here's the part we need. To fund your research, you're going to need to raise $2 million. Investors are going to provide $2 million in initial capital in exchange for 50% of the unlevered equity in the firm. So we're trying to determine what's the total market value of the firm without leverage. So that's what we're asking for in part A. And we can determine this because we already have information in the problem that tells us that the investors are going to give us $2 million in exchange for 50% of the unlevered equity in the firm. So the total market value of the firm has to be that $2 million times 2, because they're going to give us $2 million in exchange for half of the unlevered equity. So in this case, the market value of the firm, $4 million. So we calculated that easily just with the information we were given. Now in part B, we're going to move on to B. It says, suppose we're going to borrow $1 million. According to MM, what fraction of the firm's equity would we have to sell in order to raise the additional $1 million that we need? Okay, so MM says the total value of the firm is still going to be $4 million. That's still the total value of the firm. We're just going to have $1 million in debt, and then the other $3 million will be equity. So if we know that the equity is valued at $3 million and we need to raise $1 million, 1 million divided by 3 million, 33% of the equity is how much we need to sell in order to raise $1 million. So you see how we did that. In part B, we're going to assume we're borrowing $1 million. The value of the firm is still $4 million. So if we are going to have $1 million in debt, then the other $3 million are equity. So we need to raise $1 million. We need to sell 33% of the equity in order to raise $1 million. So let's look at part C. In part C, what are the value of my shares of the firm's equity in both A and B? Okay, so let's look at that. In A, our equity, we're talking about 50% of the 4 million. So that comes out to 2 million. If I can get my dollar sign. In part B, our equity is 2/3 or 66%, 2/3 of 3 million. So that still comes out to $2 million for our equity. So in a perfect market, the choice between the capital structure doesn't actually affect the value to the entrepreneur. The value is still the same, whether you use debt or equity, the total value of the firm that we're talking about. So this is going to be similar to the calculations you'll do for the second problem in Module 5. So keep in mind, on this particular one, there's no fancy functions or Excel features you need to use. These are some you're just going to kind of think about and logically lay out the information and just quick calculations. So let's take a look at the next problem, or a problem similar to your next problem. So I'm going to skip ahead in your textbook to problem 7. So in our textbook here, we're looking at problem number 7. So what this says, and it's very similar to the third problem you're going to have in Module 5, but this one in the textbook says that this pharmaceutical company had EBIT of $325 million in 2013. They had interest expenses of $125 million, and their corporate tax rate is 40%. So we need to determine in Part A, what is their net income? Now, we can determine the net income by taking the EBIT minus the interest minus their taxes, and that'll effectively give us the net income. So let's see what that would come out to in this case. Our EBIT, 325 million, minus our interest, which is 125 million. So I'm going to subtotal these so that what's remaining, multiply that times 1 minus the tax rate. So what this is saying is 325 million minus 125 million. So the remaining amount, multiply that times 1 minus the tax rate. So that's going to give us net income. So in this case, that would end up being 120 million. So we just calculated net income, which is the EBIT minus the interest minus the taxes. Let me fix this. Minus taxes. Okay? So we got net income. So then on Part B, what is the total of this company's net income and interest payments? Okay, so we can add up the net income and interest payments. We just calculated the net income to be 120, and we were told that the interest payments were 125. So we've got 245 million is the total of our net income and interest payments. So then in Part C, it's asking, what if we hadn't had any interest expenses? Then what would have been our net income? And how does that compare to what we got in Part B? So if we had not had any interest payments, we would have paid taxes on this entire 325 million EBIT. We would have paid taxes on all of that had we not had interest expenses. So we can see how much that would have been if we take 325 times 1 minus the tax rate. This will tell us how much we would have had in net income. And it would have been 195 million. And so how does that compare to Part B? That's 50 million lower than in Part B. So then Part D is asking us, what was the amount of the interest tax shield? So the amount of the interest tax shield, we can just take the amount of that interest payment and multiply it times the tax rate to see how much that tax shield was. So 125 million times 40%, our tax shield was 50 million. So that's how you're going to walk through step by step problem 7. Again, there's no specific fancy functions or formulas for Excel. You could even do, if the numbers are round like these example numbers are, you could do this by hand, but you can also use Excel to calculate, but there's not any specific functions or special financial calculators that you need to do this particular problem. Looks like I have some time still on the video, so I'm going to go ahead and also work with you on problem 8 in the textbook. Problem 8 is going to be similar to the last problem in your Module 5 homework assignment. So we'll go ahead and look at this one more problem. So this is a shorter problem. It says this company expects to have net income next year of 20.75 million. And they expect to have free cash flow of 22.15 million. And our tax rate in this firm is 35%. So the question is in part A, if this company increases leverage so that its interest expense rises by $1 million, how will its net income change? Well, we can determine that. We can do that calculation. If net income was expected to be 2.75 million, and we're going to subtract 1 million times 1 minus the tax rate, because interest is a tax deductible expense, remember. And so if here's our formula, we're going to take 20.75 minus 1 times 1 minus the tax rate, and our new cash flow, or I'm sorry, our new net income would be 20.10 million if they were to do that, if they were to make that change, increase the leverage by increasing our interest expenses by 1 million. Our net income would simply change to 20.1 million. Now part B is asking, how will this change the free cash flow? Now, free cash flow is not affected by interest expenses. So the answer to this particular question is not at all. Free cash flow is not affected by our interest payments. So that should give you a great head start to the problems in Module 5. If you have additional questions, most certainly email me, and I can still give you more information or help if you need it. But I think that if you review this video and go through the steps as I've laid them out, you'll be able to complete those problems just fine. I look forward to talking to you in the discussion area, and enjoy the rest of your week.